I lost everything. Lost my partner. My partner's going to have our home. Like there's so many things I lost. And I was, I just built that. I'm a young adult. I just built those things and I just lost it all. Not to mention you have this label on your head, like you went to a psych ward. I joke with my family, like, man, I wish I went to prison. Like, I wish I went to prison instead of going like a psych ward, because people hear that and they're like, there's so much taboo around it.
Back in April, we sat down with Jess, who shared a truly horrifying story about her adverse reaction to Abilify. The story was so shocking and intense, it actually became the most watched video on our channel. Jess had recently gotten married when a psychotic reaction to some magic mushrooms landed her in a psychiatric hospital. While there, she was pressured into taking a long-acting injectable antipsychotic called Abilify. What followed was nothing short of catastrophic. Shortly after the injection, Jess developed devastating adverse reactions that caused global neurologic damage. She woke up feeling as if her mind and body had been poisoned. Her brain no longer functioned. She couldn't feel hunger, thirst, sleepiness, or even the effects of alcohol. And her cognitive abilities were so impaired, she couldn't even think straight or even imagine objects in her mind's eye. Even worse, when the drug wore off a month later, none of these symptoms went away. And Jess soon discovered an entire online community of people suffering from the same adverse reaction. This condition destroyed her life, and she nearly didn't make it, in her own words. But what's happened to Jess since then? Today, we're exploring the bittersweet journey of recovery from one of the most terrifying adverse reactions I've ever seen. So Jess, when we spoke last in April, you were suffering from severe PSSD, essentially sexual dysfunction induced by an antidepressant. In your case, it was Abilify. And essentially, you were on the verge of taking your life. I mean, things were not going well for you. You're having a lot of suicidal thoughts. Catch us up. What's happened since then?
Thank you for having me. I just want to say I really appreciate your work. Josef, you mean a lot to me and the community, and I'm glad to be back. And your platform has done a lot for everyone in the community, so thank you. Mm-hmm. I know back in April when we had our interview, we discussed how I started Parnate, which is an MAOI, an antidepressant. And that was my point where I was at the end. That was my last kind of chance. I was very scared to try other medications. So all the research that I've done personally and other people who have personally taken it as well that saw results in anhedonia and blunting and other PSSD symptoms, that seemed like the best chance for me. I was very nervous about having ECT, having the electric shock therapy. That was something that I was very scared about. So taking another antidepressant was something that was more comfortable for me. So I made the hard decision to take it in April. And I truly didn't think it would help because I have tried other antidepressants to help and they didn't help. And I've heard many stories of other people taking more medications. Not only would they not help, but sometimes they would actually make it worse. So when I had taken it, I was not optimistic. And honestly, when I had the interview with you, I was in my head, I was like, I don't even know I'm doing this. It's almost pointless. But I thought, if anything, maybe one person can gain something from this. And I kind of thought this can be it. I told my story. So within 3 weeks to a month after I had the interview with you, that's when I started showing signs of a change. I started having more motivation just to get out of bed. I started to feel closer to my family, more connected to my family. When I had the anhedonia and the blunting, it's almost impossible to even feel your environment, never mind enjoy anything. So I slowly started to enjoy time with them. I started to enjoy music again. I started to laugh sometimes. Even my sister was like, oh my God, you just laughed. And that I was at a point where I didn't laugh for a year. If I did laugh, it was being polite. So I also reached a point where it was easy to get out of bed. my routine became second nature like it used to be. When I was sick and had anhedonia, I didn't want to even get out of bed. I would have to force myself to do anything. Everything was a challenge. So once I started experiencing that, I basically was able to function again, and I was stable. I'm on a very low dose. I started off at 5 milligrams when we spoke, and then I slowly increased it to 15, and I'm still at 15 milligrams. And I'm not sure if I'm going to taper off anytime soon, but so far it has been working for me. The first month I did experience symptoms such as fatigue, and I was very lightheaded. So that was hard because I know it causes like hypertension sometimes, and there is food restrictions. That's why sometimes it's hard to even get it prescribed, because there's a lot of research and data showing that sometimes certain types of food, there's poor interaction. So doctors, if they're not experienced in it, they don't really want to prescribe it, because it was hard for me to get it prescribed. I went through about 10 doctors before somebody would prescribe it to me in the States.
Mm-hmm. And so catch me up here, because there may be other people with PSSD listening to this who haven't heard about Parnate. Can you just talk about some of the things that you've heard about online from other people? I know everything is very anecdotal in this space, but what even brought Parnate onto your radar as something to try?
Yes. So I first want to say that I'm not a doctor, and I'm not giving advice. I'm just saying from my personal experience and from what other people I know who their personal experience, what they went through. So I spent over a year doing research when I was sick because I had nothing else to do and I did not want to die. And I spoke to so many doctors, and there's normally a common theme of first line of defense of a type of drug they want to give you. And a lot of them I didn't feel comfortable taking, given what happened to me after the antipsychotic. So I really tried to weigh out what was worth it for me to put in my body again. And the people I met in the community on different forums, there was a lot of research that people have done on their own, just collected data that they've done on their own, showing that, oh, this person said this helped me. This person said this helped me. This person saw remission in this. And it works completely different on traditional antidepressants, the newer ones. So I felt more comfortable taking it just given off of what people I met personally with just their own experience, like verbally, they told me, hey, I tried this MAOI, it helped me with this. Hey, I tried this one, it helped me with that. And more research I've done just through forums, like people writing personal stories of, I reached remission in this class of antidepressant. I saw more negative ones with other antidepressants. And for anhedonia in particular, I saw more recovery or remission stories with that one. And just how it works different. Go ahead.
Yeah. Now I was going to say, does it globally improve the symptoms? Because when I think about PSSD, there's two big things there that I see. There's the sexual dysfunction, but then there's also a lot of cognitive symptoms, a lot of anhedonia, difficulty thinking. Is it hitting one area? Is it hitting both of them? What do you see? Maybe even personally or just from other people in the community?
Yes. So I personally have experienced more cognitive processing better has increased. It's almost to the point where it used to be, because when I was severely bad, or the effects from the antipsychotics affected me a lot in that area. I could not convey a thought. I know a lot of people in the community call it blank mind, or I think it's called aphantasia, where you can't visualize something, you can't think of something. And I was at that point. My family would even say something to me and I wouldn't know what to say back. I couldn't think of anything to say, and my mind was blank. A lot of people say blank mind. So since then, my mind has been way better. I can convey thoughts. I can converse in a conversation. I can think of things like I used to. I don't want to say my processing is the same before, but it's definitely pretty close. I have more motivation. I feel pretty close to where I used to be. I don't have the same stamina. When I was really sick, I had zero energy. And I don't know if it's partially due from not having a reward system, but I really had no energy to do anything. And now I have a lot more energy to do things. It's not the same, but it's a lot better. And as far as sexual dysfunction or PSSD, I have seen increases with libido, but everything hasn't been exactly the same as before, but it is better. It's not what it used to be. And I don't want to say it's cured or I'm cured, but it's definitely, I'm at like a stable functional point. I know with men in the community, it's a lot harder, obviously. And it's a very taboo subject, and not too many people even like to talk about it. And a lot of people are extremely embarrassed to even speak about it with a friend, never mind on a platform. And I know a lot of people are suffering with that. Almost not the most, but I know the dysfunction alongside the anhedonia is some of the hardest things I hear in the community. And for me, it helps my anhedonia the most. As far as this blunting and depression level, that has increased the most, and my cognitive processing has increased the most. If that makes any sense.
It does. And I mean, I always respect the people in the PSSD community because like yourself, they are really good researchers. And I've heard little threads along the way about sometimes Wellbutrin was helpful for people. Some people like Adderall. And so, I mean, there does appear to be something dopaminergic going on, because these are all dopamine drugs. Like the MAOI that you mentioned is the monoamine oxidase inhibitor, which is the enzyme that breaks down serotonin, norepinephrine, and dopamine, which is what I think is interesting. So it kind of, those chemicals don't get broken down. Has that been something that you've noticed as well, that maybe dopaminergic drugs may be playing a role in improving the symptoms of PSSD for some people? Obviously not for everyone, but for some.
Yeah. I have seen some people show results using MAOIs, and Parnate in particular and Nardil are two that I see are the most common. It's very tricky because obviously everyone's different, everybody's different, and it is really playing with fire when you just kind of put a substance in your body whenever you put anything in your body. So that's the hard part. We're all kind of trying to communicate. It's just like this big game of telephone that we're all doing. And we're trying to figure out, hey, what's going on with you? What's going on with you? And we share our stories. So it's a lot of feedback just from personal experience and from what we've learned from other doctors. And not to mention, a lot of people are from different parts of the world. So there's parts of the world where you might not have access to resources or doctors like other people would have. So that's something I'm also learning. Like some people don't even have access to certain drugs. A lot of people don't even have access to MAOIs. Like even for me being in the States, it was hard to get, never mind someone in the UK or someone in Europe. And there's a lot of study and research too that's being shown where it's autoimmune issues as well. So some people are doing autoimmune treatments or testing with antibodies and brain scans, PET scans, spinal tap scans, and just like spinal tap testing. And they're doing research behind that to see, is it something autoimmune? Because if it is, taking a drug could exacerbate those issues. And there has been people in the community who have taken drugs where it would get worse.
I was just going to ask you that very question. In my practice, I deal a lot with a condition called protracted withdrawal, which is almost like a bad brain bruise or concussion that someone gets when they come off medications. And it's really hard to put them on new medications after that happens. It's almost like the neurons are very sensitive, and sometimes you make them worse inadvertently. Yes. Do you see something similar in PSSD? Is there a sensitivity to drugs where people, they may have tolerated a drug before and now they're having a bad reaction to it, or they seem to have more side effects or maybe more exaggerated side effects? Is anything like that going on within the PSSD community?
Yes. So I'm on multiple forums and groups that actually, one in particular is doing a lot of data and research on PSSD in particular and other autoimmune issues. And they've conveyed a very, very big document that they're working on. They've been working for a long time. And a lot of it, there's a lot of correlations with some of the antibody testings they're doing, or SFN. Do you know what that is? the small fiber neuropathy.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot of correlation with that. And there's some connection with this. When people are experiencing PSSD symptoms, they're doing other, immune testing and antibody testing, and they're showing these, it's basically like a physical issue instead of like a psychosomatic or mental illness. Because, you basically go to a psychiatrist or a therapist or even your GP, and they think, oh, you just have depression, or you just have this, or you have this mental illness. But sometimes there is this underlying issue, or like you're even saying, them having protracted withdrawals, they have this injury now, and even the drug could cause the injury or exacerbate an autoimmune issue that didn't even know they had. So
yeah,
this team in particular, they're actually, a lot of them are, or almost all of them are PSSD survivors or victims, and they have put together this just to figure out this research, the correlations, and there's a lot of major studies in that right now, and they're trying to put it together to submit it to doctors or researchers to look into it, because there's not much research behind it.
Yeah. For those of you who are listening and aren't familiar with small fiber neuropathy, there's a test that you can do where someone will take a biopsy of you. Usually it's done near the ankle, but you can do it in other places. And then they count the number of nerve fibers in there. And what they're finding in people with PSSD is that there's hardly any nerve fibers for some people. So, and I've also seen this in protracted withdrawal. And that's a really unusual finding. That it's typically a finding that you only see in autoimmune neuropathies. But it, like Jess has mentioned, it's really important to have that objective data, because a lot of times people are just told it's in their head.
Yeah, Thank you for explaining that. Obviously, I'm not a doctor, and I'm not even well versed on that side of it either, because it's people I'm friends with that just kind of relay this information to me. So I only know what I know, but I don't study it, and I don't have like a background in that. But I appreciate you explaining it, because it would have been a lot better for you to do that than me.
Well, yeah, and for other people out there listening, but something comes to my mind, Jess. How do you distinguish between maybe your brain healing, because I do know that happens in some people, and the effects of the drug? Do you have any thoughts about teasing those things apart?
Are you saying as far as being on Parnate and like natural healing?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So I do think I am experiencing a lot of natural healing as well, just because I haven't been on an antipsychotic in over a year, or basically a year at this point. Over a year, sorry. And that was really not, personally, that wasn't doing well for me, and I was on such a high dose, so it really messed me up. And the drug I'm on now, especially at the lower dose and the way it is reacting to my body, it's a lot more forgiving, I guess you could say. And it was hard in the beginning. In the beginning, I think it was harder for me to notice natural recovery, but I do think now, the longer I've kind of stabilized from the antidepressant and just keeping a healthy routine, I have noticed my sleep has been better. My appetite is way, way better. I had zero appetite before. I could barely eat. And that's also a common thing I hear in the community, that people don't have any thirst or hunger. They have no reward system. I think that's a correlation, where they don't even want to eat or drink. They have to like make themselves eat and drink. And that's something that's changed. And I do think partially because naturally I just have been more active, and I've been in the sun more. I've been doing things that I guess you would say is like a healthy routine that I think has helped my overall like well-being. And my central nervous system.
I had a guest on just recently, Jess, who said that he couldn't feel the drive to sleep. This was a young man with PSSD, and I think all of these things come together again with the drive for thirst, and the drive for hunger. It's almost like there's a sensory disturbance, like you said, or a reward system disturbance, where he would say, I feel my eyes getting heavy, but there's I don't have that feeling anymore, which I think is such an interesting thing about this condition.
It is. And I've heard that everywhere. Almost everyone I've encountered who identifies with PSSD or even anhedonia, they say the same thing. They say that they don't feel sleepy and they don't feel that natural, okay, it's time, like your body starts to get ready to sleep. And I didn't feel that either. I only started feeling that more the last few months. And even then, it's still not the same. I still have disrupted sleep compared to what I used to have before being medicated, but it's way better than it used to be. Before, it was almost unbearable.
Yeah. You know, I had Simon Wright from PSSD Network on here, and he was talking about not able to feel a buzz when he drank alcohol. You know, the euphoria that he would feel previously, he just felt dizzy when he drank, but there was none of those normal feelings there.
Yeah. It was the same for me as well. There was actually points where I would try to drink, you know, a couple glasses of wine to see, because I would hear others say that, because I stopped drinking after everything that happened to me because I just wanted to be clean. And I was like, let me just try and see. And I would not feel, normally I would feel a slight buzz or, you know, tipsy. I wouldn't feel anything. And I hear this all the time. People smoke cigarettes or, you know, drink, or some people even, you know, smoke marijuana, and they're like, I don't feel like a high or a buzz or this endorphin, or even exercising. I've seen people who will, you know, do either cold plunges or run, and they're like, I don't feel any like rush, you know, like you feel this rush. They don't feel that.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask you about, Jess, you were the first person I spoke to who had developed PSSD from an antipsychotic. And so I know there's likely others out there, but I wanted to ask you, do you think that there was anything different, particularly about your symptoms as compared to the people who are developing PSSD from the SSRIs, you know, which is the one the condition is named after, or the SNRIs? I don't know if you've noticed any difference there with getting it from antipsychotics compared to antidepressants.
So yeah, that's something that me and others also have this open conversation about. We're trying to figure out is what's the correlation? Is it even considered PSSD? Is it the same kind of umbrella? Is it something completely different on its own? But I also have met others who identify with PSSD or even just symptoms alike or anhedonia. And I personally don't know really like the rhyme or reason of why these things happen, because also other people that take these drugs sometimes are okay. And I have noticed there has been some people who have been injured with antipsychotics that have shown remission. I've seen more people show remission, or I guess you could say recovery, after antipsychotic damage, but I don't see as much from antidepressants. I don't see that as much. But I also see longer use of antidepressant, you know. Some people I know that get injured by antipsychotic, it was more of a shorter use. But some people I know that had the antidepressant was longer use, but I don't personally know. I can't figure it out. A lot of people I know haven't had any other really theories on it. But it is a mystery. Yeah. But they do have almost identical symptoms or under the same umbrella, in my opinion.
Okay. Just before we segue out to talking about some of the communities and how people can get support to make it through this, I want to catch up with you a little on a personal note.
Yeah.
When we spoke last time, I remember you telling me that you developed PSSD right after you got married. Correct me if I'm wrong, and that it was really challenging for your relationship. Catch me up. How is your relationship going now?
So I had that reaction, 4 months after I got married.
Yeah.
And he was supportive for the most part, especially during the beginning. And my family was supportive as well. But it definitely put a toll on everyone, family members and my partner. But there was a point in March and April when he told me that he can't continue and he wanted a separation. So I'm actually in the process of a divorce right now.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's
is this something?
Go ahead. No, you can go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, I mean, this brings up the stark reality of this condition that, I mean, it is so disruptive to people's lives. I mean, is this something that you see within the community as well? The destruction of relationships because of this?
Yeah. I personally know the most people I know in the community are single, or a lot of them became single after the condition occurred. Some are in relationships, and thank God that there's a person for them that has patience, that can understand. But it is almost like impossible sometimes to hold a relationship, because especially if your body doesn't work the same way, you can't work, you can't show affection or love the same way. To have a romantic partner is very challenging. And I don't want to be morbid, but it's just kind of like the reality of the condition. And I'm not saying it's impossible. It just makes it a lot harder.
Yes. And so let's transition now. So it's clearly bittersweet at the moment. I mean, you are experiencing recovery, but it sounds like your life was completely upended. How does someone survive this condition to at least make it to the point where they are maybe seeing some improvements and they can start to have hope? Tell us how you got through all of this.
So everyone has their own version of coping. And honestly, when I was at my worst, I was at a point where there's really no copes. It's almost just killing time. That's the main goal, is just to kill as much time as you can and survive each second, each minute, each hour, each day, each month, each year. And to try to keep a routine, even if it's small. My routine was really sad, but I had one, and it was trying to be outside when I could and try to spend time with my family when I could, try to get out of bed, even if it was difficult, just to do it a few times a day. Take a shower every day, change every day. I would drink tea every day. It's very sad, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. But when there's a point where, the blunting, this connection to your environment, the anhedonia, the sexual dysfunction, you almost feel like it's pointless. Like every day is pointless. Every day. And you really just want to put out your misery. Like, I hate to say it, but like, that's just how I felt. And when I hear people say every day, like, put me out of my misery. And there isn't really like a one size fits all answer solution. For me, I honestly don't even know how I'm talking to you right now, to be honest. There was so many points where I was done, completely done. And quite literally, my family and these people online that I met, that were very good friends now, had to talk me off a ledge, like quite literally. And because of them, like every person that gave me that little thread or that little hope, each line I was, each part of my journey, I still kept going. Maybe sometime that one time they said something helps me just stay one more day. But there was points where I really, really wasn't going to stay one more day. And for some reason I did. But the online community really helped me, because when somebody's healthy and they've never experienced depression, never mind something like this, it's impossible to relate. You can have this level of empathy and understanding, but you really can't relate. And you quite truly feel like you're fighting this invisible battle. And no one can see it. Nobody understands it. You don't even understand it. And it's the most complex thing, your brain. And it's not like anyone even has answers, because everyone's brain is different. It's just, it is what it is. So when you're in this place of feeling so isolated and you're really just in your own mind, it's a mind game. And it's almost like this stoic approach. And you have to like talk yourself out of things all day. You have to talk yourself to do something. You have to convince yourself, even if you feel like you can't do it, you don't want to do it, you literally have to make yourself. That's why I even used the analogy before. It's the engine in the car is dead and you're pushing the car up the hill. Like you have to. And the online spaces, there were so many people who were suffering longer than me, or even had worse physical symptoms, that were so supportive and encouraging. And even looking at them, thinking like, wow, they have this worse than me. They've been doing this longer than me. Like, I can do one more day. If they've done this for this many years, then I can do it another day. So a lot of those people in the community were really beacon of hope for me, or people who were seeing remission or getting better from treatment, whether that's immune treatment or medication. That was really inspiring. I'm telling you, I would look at everything online. I was on every platform talking to anyone that would talk to me because I wanted to figure out what can help me or help others, because I didn't want to just sit there and rot, essentially,
How do you feel about the future from where you are now?
For myself, or like the community, or
for yourself?
Myself, yeah. It's hard to say. I want to be optimistic. I'm pretty optimistic about it, but I still try to live in the moment, or more day by day. Because even when after happened to me, it really showed me that literally nothing in life is free, or the things we take advantage of is ridiculous. Like the things that you're born with that I got taken away from me that I never could imagine in a million years. I really just try to soak in every second, every day. So sometimes it's even hard for me to think of my future, because I do have this level of fear where, am I going to go back to being bad? Am I going to crash from this drug? If I try to taper off, is that going to hurt me? Am I sensitive now? If I take something else one day, even if I'm in the ER, it's an emergency, and they give me something, is that going to affect the medication I'm on now? I have all these thoughts, but I try to push them away. But I honestly feel like I'm in a bonus round. I joke with my family, like I'm in a bonus round right now because I didn't think I was going to make it. So I'm just trying my best to enjoy little things here and there, but I'm also trying not to look too far in the future. But I am optimistic as far as kind of starting over a new foundation. And I definitely learned not only a lot about myself, but this endurance and strength that other people have taught me, and things I thought, like the level of human suffering that I didn't think existed in the world, especially on something, on something simple as online, or these spaces where you never even would know these people existed. I would never think this kind of condition existed unless someone told me, that I met personally. But other than that, it's not really mainstream. No one really talks about it. Everyone knows depression, but no one knows like this level of suffering. And I am reaching a point where I'm finally starting to let go of the past, especially this past year, but it's so hard because I'm traumatized. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like I have severe PTSD from that experience. And not to mention what I did to my family, not intentionally, but watching them suffer alongside with me, or my ex-partner, and just the loss. There's so much shame, so much guilt. I feel like a loser. I didn't work for a year. I lost everything. Lost my partner. My partner's going to have our home. Like there's so many things I lost. And I was, I just built that. I'm a young adult. I just built those things and I just lost it all. Not to mention you have this label on your head, like you went to a psych ward. I joke with my family, like, man, I wish I went to prison. Like, I wish I went to prison instead of going like a psych ward, because people hear that and they're like, there's so much taboo around it. And I just hate that. I wish there was this healthy dialogue that not only we can have with our family, but our doctors, our community, where it's not this taboo thing. Like this is normal for people to experience trauma or depression or anxiety or PSSD or anhedonia. It happens. And it's actually more common than we think. I've actually met people in real life that I didn't even know experienced similar things I experienced. They openly told me after I shared with them that I was vulnerable. But I feel like if you never share, you'll never know. Sorry to segue, but basically I am optimistic, but I try not to I don't like to plan out like long-term stuff right now, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, if you were my patient and you were in my practice, what I would tell you is things are looking really good and your trajectory is very promising. And I don't see these things sliding backwards, not with protracted withdrawal. I don't treat a lot of people I don't really treat people with PSSD. I talk to a lot of them, but I don't hear about the condition heading in the other direction.
Yeah.
Some of the things that you're describing, like the sleep returning, all of that, I'd be hard pressed to attribute all of that to Parnate.
Yeah.
And so I do think it's very likely that just through neuroplasticity, things are coming back. And I'd see no reason why they wouldn't continue in that way. which is
Yeah.
great. It's looking really good, Jess. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Someone stumbles upon this interview series. They're new with PSSD. You had mentioned how important the community was for you, and it really is for all of these severe drug injuries, whether it's finasteride, isotretinoin, or it's protracted withdrawal. The experience of it is so unique, and even your closest friends and family can't even come close to understanding it. I mean, it is so important that you find people who know what it is and who you can relate to. And so I just want you to list out, where would you tell someone to go who's newly diagnosed with PSSD and they're looking to start getting plugged in with other people?
So is it okay if I say like certain like platforms? Is that allowed? Or
yeah, okay. Go for it.
Sorry,
yeah.
Okay. First, for me, when I started, Facebook does have some like med damage pages. I have noticed that there is more older crowd on Facebook. I think they're just not as used to other platforms, and maybe they don't know. So when I joined Facebook, that was harder because I couldn't relate to people my age. But Facebook has some some pages and some support groups. Inner Compass is one of the oldest ones that's been around for a long time, that a lot of people I know have seen support and help through that. And YouTube, there's a lot of people now on YouTube where I know it's not necessarily a support space, but it's a space where people can learn and just communicate through comments and connect on there. That's also how I found you, and Russell B was on YouTube. And from there too, I would read comments and see other people saying similar things. And sometimes I would talk with them on just the comment threads. And Reddit, the only thing with Reddit is it's kind of scary. You know, it's the internet. Okay. It's basically the Wild West. So you'll see some very morbid and scary things on Reddit. But I found some things on Reddit that helped me a lot. And there is some positive things on Reddit, like the PSSD network's on there too. And there's an anhedonia network on there. And there's an anti-psychiatry one. But there is some scary things on there too. I don't want someone to go there and be like, oh, like this, I'm, messed up forever, and see some scary comment. So just be aware. And there is Discord spaces. I actually started my own Discord server about a month ago to create a support space for people, because I joined one that was very helpful to me. And I decided to create my own in a different way, where I'll host like voice chat meetings. So it's a support meeting where I'll start and lead it. And I basically just want everybody to share their stories, share their struggles, vent, just create networking, friendships, and kind of communicate what they're navigating with, like where they are, updated on their testing, if they're seeing results, if they're seeing negative results. And I try to police it where I make sure everyone has a time to speak. I'll ask everyone to be muted. I'll organize it so no one's like being disrespectful or speaking over each other. But I started that about a month ago, and I've seen some progress with it, which is nice. And Ancient Peacock is someone who's in the community as well. I'm not sure if you know her. Yeah, I know she's more, I guess, driven towards like benzos. A lot of people in her space have like benzo harm, which is helpful as well, just to relate to like med damage alone. And there's another woman called Baylissa. I don't know if you know her. She's sweet. She helped me a lot. I had some sessions with her. If somebody's looking for more one-on-one and they don't want to be overwhelmed with platforms, I know they're like helpful in the community. But I would say normally Discord and Reddit and YouTube and Facebook are some of the plugs where you can start from, but they are overwhelming and sometimes they are scary. So I'm not going to say, because when I was on it, I was scared of a lot of things I was seeing and reading.
Okay. Jess, I just want you to directly plug your Discord channel. How can people find you on Discord? And then just tell people what Discord is if they don't know what it is.
So it's funny. I've heard of Discord for a while, and my brother used to use it for gaming. And I know most people use it for gaming. It's actually a very cool platform. It's very interesting. I never really took interest in it until I got sick, until I was on Reddit and someone's like, oh, go on this Discord space. I was like, okay. But basically, it's just a platform. You can download the app on your phone. like any other platform. And there's multiple channels within each server, and it'll say what kind of channel they're offering, and people can chat in, and every server is different. So depending on who made the server, what the server's purpose is, it'll offer different things. And in most of the servers, there's chat spaces as well, or voice spaces where you can have verbal conversations, which are very nice. I learned the most normally in the verbal chatting space. Some people I know who are sick or have blank mind or anhedonia, they don't want to speak because it's hard. There was moments where I couldn't do that either. I just would want to listen. So it's also another way. You can even mute yourself and listen. Or if you don't want to listen, you can just chat, like type in on your phone and in these chats, and you can ask questions. But there's multiple platforms on Discord that I'm involved in right now, but I just made my own recently. But the one I just made is called Shared. SHARED. Okay. Shared. Yeah.
Okay, great. So Jess, before we wrap, I just want to ask you, what haven't we touched on that you want to discuss, or perhaps there's a message that you want to share with people before we sign off?
So again, I just want to say thank you. You have really inspired me and others in the community to make our own channels or question doctors too, or question, the system alone. And I really appreciate your hard work, you and your team and your wife. I really appreciate it. So I just want to say that first.
Thank you.
I just want everyone to not only take the time to try to be vulnerable when they feel safe with someone. I feel like it only takes that one person to be that support system where they can open up and say, hey, I need you to help me because I can't figure this out. Or I need you to be an advocate for me because I can't do it. Because there was moments where I didn't know how to do that, or I was embarrassed, or I was ashamed. I didn't want to ask my husband. I didn't want to ask my sister. I thought I had to do it on my own. And I didn't even know what I was doing. Not to mention I was sick and I couldn't even think straight. Especially when you're on drugs, or you're on, like, you have these severe withdrawals and you don't even know what's going on in your body and you're sleep deprived. It's almost impossible to do this on your own. So if somebody does have someone that they feel safe with, whether that's even an online friend or a parent or a spouse, anyone they feel safe with, I want them to try to let their wall down a little if they need someone to advocate for them, and to know they can question doctors, they can question even their family members. It's really up to them with their own body. I know there's points where some things might be necessary, like extreme measures, but sometimes we don't think we have a choice. We think, oh, we have to listen to the doctor, just listen to the doctor. But we actually should be able to question what is being done to us, what's being put into us. And I hate this system that has been created with psychiatry where you almost lose every control you have. And it's because, like, you're out of your mind. You can't, it's like everything you have to say just goes out the window because you're crazy now. And it's terrifying. And the way I think of it, it's like you don't force, chemo on a cancer patient. Like, there's plenty of people who've had cancer that are like, I'd rather just die. I don't want to go through that. But then there's people who are maybe diagnosed or misdiagnosed or experiencing mental symptoms. And then they're like, well, we have to be force medicated. You have to be force hospitalized. And that's just so bizarre to me. Not to mention every other industry that's such a simple industry where such as buying something from, a pastry at a bakery, or you're buying gas. It's like the customer is always right. Customer service or happy clients. And they want to cater to that audience. But then when it comes to our health, not just with psychiatry, but the whole system, it doesn't matter. Like, these doctors, their authority and what they're doing it's right. Don't ever question a doctor. Don't ever, which I'm not saying, I don't know, overgeneralize, but there is this, like, level of superiority where they not only are viewed that way, or even family members view that way, like, just trust the doctor, and you immediately get dismissed. So I don't want people to be in a point where they feel vulnerable or desperate and they just kind of surrender and they just give up because they don't know what to do, or their family just gives up and they don't know what to do. I really hope that everyone reaches a point where we have this healthy dialogue and open conversations about what is actually going on with your whole life, not just your body, not just your mind, because there's so many factors why somebody could be feeling the way they're feeling mentally, physically. And there's a lot of black and white that happens in the system. And it's ridiculous. I didn't even know how bad it is until I got clawed into it, the hard way, like getting hit by a freight train. So I just want everyone basically to try to be an advocate for themselves or their family member, or even if family members watching this, to try to take the time to really try to understand what is going on with my son, my daughter, my wife, my husband, because sometimes it's hard to take those extra moments because life is busy. And if it's unfamiliar, it's scary too. Sorry if that was too much.
I think there's a lot of people nodding at their screens right now because a big part of our audience are drug injured, and they've been chewed up and spat out by this black and white system that has, just bulldozed them many times against their will, cut them off medications, all these horrible things. So really well said. So Jess, thank you so much for getting in touch with us again and updating us on your story.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
If you or a loved one is suffering from PSSD and is struggling to find support, this video here can help explain this challenging conditions to friends, family, and doctors.